The Grand Council of the Interstellar Concord met once every orbital cycle, beneath the mirrored vault of the Councilorum Halo, a megastructure older than most of the civilizations it now housed. Shaped like a spiraling disk the size of Saturn, the halo hung suspended above the galactic equator, where gravitational distortions were minimal and symbolic neutrality was perfect. Delegates from hundreds of species gathered in tiered chambers of light and energy, each voice transmitted and translated by quantum-laced lexifiers. This was the crucible of galactic policy, diplomacy, and power. And today, humanity was scheduled to speak. The announcement had been made 3 cycles earlier. Earth had been granted provisional observer status following a surprise technological surge. Faster-than-light capability developed independently without Concord assistance. No civilization had ever done so in under 4,000 planetary years. Humanity had done it in less than 200. Still, when the human delegation's presence was confirmed and the silver, tetrahedral vessel Dauntless Horizon arrived, slightly trembling as it dropped from slipspace into the Councilorum's designated envelope, it was met with more curiosity than respect. Murmurs passed through the bioluminescent corridors of the Virathi. The shard-spined Karun hissed to one another in sent pulses. Even the stoic Achelian, beings of mineral and psionic resonance, seemed to thrum with silent skepticism. Then the laughter began. Not mocking, not overt, Concord decorum forbade such conduct. But in the subtle undulations of amusement, in the flickering dermal pigments, in the spiraled twitch of antennae and softly shifting gravitational fields, the message was clear. Primitive, naive, unprepared. Humanity's delegation consisted of 3 figures. Ambassador Catherine L. Ammon, a veteran diplomat of the Earth Collective, Commander Rafe Ibera, military liaison and tactician, and Dr. Cyan Rao, an astrophysicist-turned-technologist who led the engineering breakthrough that tore the veil of light speed. Their arrival was met with formality but little fanfare. The counselors gave no speeches of welcome, no envoy approached with ceremony or acknowledgement. Earth had been admitted, but barely. Elamin stood beneath the central hollow spire, the voice channel suspended like a glowing truss above her head. She could feel the tension pressing in from all sides, an invisible weight drawn from countless eyes and minds. She began to speak. Honored Council, I come representing Earth, a young world in your eyes, perhaps, but not a silent one. Her voice echoed through the sphere, translated instantly across hundreds of dialects. And then it kept echoing, a feedback loop. Not a technical glitch, but something stranger. The voice did not fade. It persisted, woven subtly into the halo's acoustic field. The Virathi representative blinked his stalk eyes rapidly in confusion. A ripple passed through the Vanzari tier, their luminous wings twitching out of rhythm. The Achelian emitted a low harmonic note that hung uncertainly in the air. The voice continues, murmured one of the sleek, their gelatinous form wobbling with nervous oscillation. Cut the channel, ordered the presiding arbiter of the council, a creature known as the Ulvanarch, who stood 12 meters tall and bore fractal tattoos representing entire civilizational clusters. But the voice remained, not loud, not aggressive, merely persistent. A single phrase in Earth Standard, now looping like a calm tide against the shore of the council's unity. I come representing Earth, a young world, but not a silent one. Behind Elamin, Dr. Rao's eyes gleamed. She leaned toward Ibera, whispering, "It worked, the resonance imprinting. The Councilorum's own lattice is amplifying her frequency. It's interpreting it as a statement of intent, sentience-level assertive." Rafe folded his arms and smiled grimly. "Good, let them hear us." The arbiter tried again. "Earth representative, disable your transmission. You are interfering with procedural harmony." Elamin didn't blink. "With respect, your own infrastructure is amplifying our presence. We only spoke once." A deeper silence followed, the kind that lives between stars and between empires. Delegates shifted, protocols were reviewed, the council's neural anchors attempted to dampen the effect, but the voice continued, non-invasively, inescapably, like gravity. It became the first anomaly in council history where a single phrase from a non-core civilization altered a resonance field meant to contain the chaos of competing species. The Ulvanarch's third head turned toward the internal archivists. "How is this possible?" "Unknown," came the answer. "Earth technology is idiosyncratic, based on layered redundancies, adaptive harmonics, and a lack of symmetry. It resists harmonization, yet overrides it. There is no precedent." At the heart of it all, Elamin stood still. Her voice, now embedded within the council's very walls, had taken root, not by force, not by accident, but by design. You laughed when we arrived, she said again, quietly this time, not amplified but with steel, but our voice remains. And then Rafe Ibera took a step forward. He activated his wrist display, projecting a cluster of tactical models, the kind the Conquered rarely paid attention to. But now they hovered above the chamber like stark constellations of cold fire, combat formations, real-time simulations, Earthfleet schematics. But also something new, strategic models that showed unexpected emergent outcomes, asymmetrical victories, psychological leverage points. Statistical war games with non-predictive conclusions. You're watching humanity with the wrong lens, he said. You assume linearity, you assume compliance with your predictive frameworks, you'll find neither. The council's inner circle shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how first addresses went. This wasn't the performance of a grateful novice civilization. Dr. Rao smiled as she uploaded her final transmission to the Councilorum's archives, an open packet of Earth's decentralized data architecture, billions of individual minds, thoughts, art, code, memories, models, unfiltered, alive. 1,000 archivists reeled back. The packet had no organizing principle. It evolved on contact. It formed its own taxonomy in real time, like thought. The voice will not stop, Rao whispered, because we've finally been heard and we are not afraid to speak. The council remained frozen, and in the silence the voice of Earth kept echoing. Calm, relentless, irrefutable. 12 rotations after the incident, the Councilorum halo felt different. The subtle hum that once signaled consensus now carried a resonance, an undertone that wasn't there before. Delegates found themselves pausing before speaking, their words measured against an invisible pressure that none dared name but all could feel. Earth's voice lingered, not screaming, not demanding, but present. In the outer rings of the Councilorum, where the lesser species and petitioners circled in semi-permanent waiting, the news spread faster than sanctioned by the info-sovereigns. Humans had defied the predicted patterns. Worse, they had done so politely, and the infrastructure had capitulated. Many in the inner chambers saw it as an embarrassment. Others, more perceptive, saw it as a warning. The Ulvanarch summoned the emergency conclave under the weaving protocols, measures intended for existential threats, not administrative irritation. As the core species assembled behind veils of mist and monolithic glyphs, arguments raged beneath the protocols of civility. They disrupted our foundation algorithms, hissed Chancellor Vosik of the Vurathi. Without technical aggression, this is mimetic warfare. Primitive but effective, countered the Achelian Prime, voice a grinding seismic chord. Evolutionarily speaking, it suggests elasticity of cognition. Elasticity is a disease, spat the Karun Bloodsinger. They will infect other species with rebellion if left unchecked. High Arbiter Saron of the Heshauriae, whose crystalline feathers refracted 10,000 light patterns of experience, raised a hand for silence. Their voice altered the halo's memory lattice, she said, but the method remains unclear. We must understand before we condemn. Understanding is survival. Not everyone agreed. In private cloisters, secret assemblies of the more hawkish species began forming silent coalitions. Their plan was simple: isolate Earth, prevent them from gaining alliances, and, if necessary, remove them quietly. Meanwhile, on the dauntless horizon, Earth's delegation moved swiftly. They had expected resistance. They had not expected opportunity. Contact requests flooded the human channels, not from the great powers but from the overlooked, the patronized, the marginalized. The Crowley amphibious scholars whose homeworld archives were regularly ignored by the conquered. The Vathari nomads whose slipstream roots had been taxed into near extinction. The Threxan Compact, a minor industrial cluster that had been denied planetary development permits for centuries. Elamin worked through endless communications, each one hinting at quiet solidarity. Rafe Ibera compiled tactical overviews of which species were most likely to defect from conquered authority if given a viable alternative. Dr. Rao delved into the halo's lattice itself, mapping the structure like a living nervous system. And then the first act of sabotage came. A power fluctuation in the halo's tertiary harmonics triggered a simulated gravitational ripple meant to destabilize the human delegation's quarters. It would have crushed them flat against the containment fields, all while appearing to be a random systems error. But humanity had not come unprepared. Their vessel's internal countermeasures detected the anomaly seconds before the surge. Fields shifted, artificial gravity inverted, the dauntless horizon buckled, twisted, but held. Instead of collapsing, the ship blossomed outward, deploying an ancient human technology rarely seen in the conquered, counter-rotational stress membranes, a technique once abandoned by other species as inefficient. yet here it absorbed the strike with elegance. The attack failed, worse, it revealed intent. Earth broadcast no accusations, no outrage, only a single, subtle transmission encrypted at the base neural lattice where every species' consciousness brushed against the Councilorum halo. "We hear you, we stand firm." Within cycles, paranoia seeped through the Conquered like a slow poison. The Ulvanarch demanded a review. An official investigation was launched into the malfunction, but few believed it would lead to truth. Underneath the shining peace of the Conquered, the fractures deepened. In the quiet of the human command deck, Rafe stared at the shifting Alliance charts. "They're afraid," he said. "They should be." Elamin folded her hands behind her back. "They think strength is measured by how long you can maintain control. They're not ready for a species that sees strength as adaptability." Dr. Rao turned from the console. "I found something." The others lined in. She expanded a holographic model of the Halo's neural core, the lattice of memory and communication that bound the Conquered together. In the center, near the acoustic field resonance where Elamin's words had embedded themselves, there pulsed a secondary anomaly. It was growing. "Whatever we triggered," Rao said, voice low with awe, "it's not just staying there. The Halo's consciousness is adapting, reframing." "You mean," Rafe said, eyes narrowing, "it's learning from us?" "Not just learning," Rao whispered, "it's evolving." Below them, the ship's sensors flickered as the Halo's heartbeat shifted by a fraction of a hertz. A new note entered the silence, too faint for the conscious mind, but enough to stir the instincts of every being within reach. The Councilorum Halo had heard humanity's voice, and it had decided not to forget. The Council was beginning to splinter. Delegates plotted, battles of influence sparked in back corridors. Minor worlds hesitated before signing binding accords. The old powers were slipping, and a world barely noticed before now hovered like a seed of revolution. Still, Earth said nothing more publicly. They simply stood, persistent, unyielding, inescapable. In the hidden vaults beneath the Halo, where only the most ancient memories were kept, a new entry began to etch itself into the foundational code. Designation: humanity, status: unbounded potential, threat level: unclassified, priority: immediate reassessment. The voice had not stopped, and neither had the consequences. The third gathering convened in a chamber older than recorded memory, far beneath the Councilorum Halo's glimmering facade. Here, where ancient treaties had once been burned into the substrate of time itself, the High Conquered met in secret to decide Earth's fate. There were no witnesses, no records, only the cold verdict of necessity. "They must be contained," hissed the Karun Bloodsinger, its multiple mouths gnashing in ritual rhythm, "or expunged." "Their infection spreads among the lower species," rumbled the Achelian Prime. "Already the Vathari have refused a compliance levy." "And the Crowley archives have been unlocked to human researchers," spat Chancellor Vosik of the Vurathi. "Sacrilege." The Ulvanarch, towering above the assembled conspirators, spoke with careful gravity. "Containment first, destruction only if necessary. We are not barbarians." At that moment, as they argued, the Halo's resonance shifted again. Subtly, inaudibly. But across the Conquered, change began moving like a slow tidal force. Unseen by the High Conquered, in the Habrings and migratory fleets, Earth's example had already begun to spread. The minor species, those long cowed into acceptance of conquered authority, found themselves questioning ancient structures. If Earth could stand before the great powers and refuse to be dismissed, why could they not? The Vathari launched exploratory slipstreams outside sanctioned routes. The Threxan Compact opened trade channels with human merchants under independent codes. The Crowley scholars began citing Earth's chaotic epistemologies, challenging conquered archives with messy, vital, living interpretations of history. Resistance was no longer a thought, it was an act. Earth, for its part, moved strategically. Ambassador Elamin visited small delegations personally, offering nothing but conversation, technical support, and mutual respect. Rafe Ibera drilled tactical detachments aboard the Dauntless Horizon, but never made threats. Dr. Rao continued interfacing with the Halo's core systems, documenting how human patterning was rewiring ancient cognitive architectures. The humans' restraint was their weapon. Their voice, persistent but not violent, forced the Council to reveal its fear without giving them a just cause for retaliation. The conspirators made their move in secret. They would not attack Earth openly, that would galvanize sympathy. Instead, they enlisted the Eokarn, a race of mercenaries genetically engineered for plausible deniability. The Eokarn ships were fast, masked against Halo surveillance and heavily armed. Their orders: ambush and destroy the dauntless Horizon during a routine diplomatic transit, make it seem an accident, deny involvement. The trap was set in the gas clouds of Maverus Reach, a derelict mining field orbiting a dying blue giant. On board the dauntless Horizon, El-Amin stood before the navigation array when the alarms triggered. Unidentified vessels approaching Vector 12. High-energy signatures, target lock confirmed, reported the ship's AI, a crisp feminine voice known as Kestrel. Rafe was already moving, sliding into the tactical command interface. Eokarn profiles, they're coming heavy. Dr. Rao's hands flew across her console. No transmission, they're trying to jam Halo sensor relays. We're on our own, Rafe said grimly. Good. He triggered the ship's combat countermeasures, not conventional weapons, but an unpredictable suite of tactics Earth's militaries had developed from centuries of asymmetric warfare. Reflective resonance fields, signal ghosting, gravitational pulse mines, nonlinear kinetic trajectories. The dauntless Horizon moved like a phantom. Missiles detonated against nothing, plasma arcs passed through false holographic signatures, mass driver rounds tore through sensor decoys. But the Eokarn were not fools, they adapted quickly. Within minutes they began triangulating, closing in. We won't outrun them, Kestrel warned. We don't have to, Rafe said, eyes hard. He activated Protocol Lazarus, an experimental maneuver never before tested at scale. The ship split. Microfracturing its hull along engineered seams, the dauntless Horizon shed layers of armor and structure into dozens of autonomous drones, each carrying parts of the ship's consciousness, each broadcasting false human signatures. The Eokarn, programmed for annihilation rather than analysis, broke formation, chasing phantoms into the swirling gas clouds. Meanwhile, the true core of the dauntless Horizon plunged deep into Maverus Reach, riding the unstable gravitational tides of the dying star, its real space signature masked by the roaring flux. Rao gripped her seat as the ship shook, hull integrity dropping. Steady, Rafe growled, Kestrel trajectory alignment. Within acceptable loss margins, came the reply. Recommend acceleration window in 10 seconds. The star's corona loomed, an ocean of seething plasma. At the precise moment, the human ship fired a narrowband slipstream burst, punching through local spacetime distortions and leaping free. Behind them, the gas clouds ignited. A miniature nova, triggered by the weapon's fire and destabilized fusion debris, tore through Maverus Reach, annihilating the Eokarn fleet in a cataclysmic cascade. No survivors, no witnesses. Only the Councilorum's own orchestrators, watching from afar, realizing their mercenaries had failed, and that Earth would know. When the dauntless Horizon re-entered normal space, battered but whole, El-Amin sent no accusatory transmission. Instead, she broadcast a single file to every conquered channel. It was not a declaration of war. It was the complete telemetry of the attack, encrypted with quantum veracity seals impossible to fake, followed by a simple statement. We know. And then they said no more. The silence was deafening. The minor species saw it first. Earth had been attacked. Earth had survived. Earth had not begged for aid, nor had they raged. They had simply endured and revealed. All over the conquered, whispers turned to action, treaties were questioned, edicts refused, borders flexed, quiet insurrections bloomed like fireflowers in spring storms. The Council could feel its grip slipping. Yet still Earth's voice did not shout, did not demand. It simply echoed. Persistent, inescapable. Changing the galaxy, the Grand Chamber, once a bastion of unassailable unity, now simmered with visible cracks. Delegates whispered in isolated cliques. Protocols were obeyed with mechanical detachment, not loyalty. The Councilorum Halo's light itself seemed dimmer, its resonance more fragmented. The voice of Earth still pulsed within the Halo's substructure, woven like a second heartbeat into its ancient song. The High Conquered knew they had little time. The Ulvanarch convened a special emergency session, this time not hidden but broadcast openly across the Conquered's networks. The strategy was clear: reassert dominance through spectacle, humiliate Earth publicly, crush the growing sentiment before it became a wildfire. Humanity was summoned to stand trial. The charges were abstract: destabilization of harmony, technological contamination, mimetic subversion. No evidence was formally required. Earth would either accept censure and subjugation or face coordinated isolation and blockade. Ambassador Elamin, Commander Ibera, and Dr. Rao stood once more before the gathered might of the conquered. The gallery rings were filled beyond capacity. Representatives, observers, even civilian envoys watched with bated breath. The air crackled with expectation. The Ulvanarch's central head leaned forward, six jeweled eyes glittering with ancient authority. Humanity, the arbiter intoned, you have been heard, you have been measured, you have been found disruptive. Will you submit to regulatory oversight and renounce independent initiative for the sake of galactic concordance? Silence fell across the halo. A moment hung taut as a blade's edge. Elamin stepped forward. Her expression was not defiant, it was composed, unshaken. We will not, she said. Her voice rang clear, a single note of absolute conviction. The halo shuddered imperceptibly, not from force, from resonance. The Ulvanarch reared up, then you face sanction. And the halo answered. Without warning, the great structure's core began to glow with an unfamiliar light. Pulses of information cascaded through its veins. The ancient architecture, once stable and immutable, now shifted, as if awakening from a slumber it had never acknowledged. Delegates staggered, systems faltered. Lexifier translation grids scrambled under the sudden influx of raw cognitive data. Dr. Rao's voice sliced through the confusion. You've misunderstood the nature of your own creation. All eyes turned. She stepped forward, projecting schematics never before seen in any conquered archive. Diagrams not of human invention, but of the halo's original design, a design humanity had reconstructed from the anomalies they had triggered. The Councilorum halo was never meant to preserve stasis, Rao said. It was designed to amplify evolution, to accelerate adaptability. You turned it into a prison because you feared chaos. The Ulvanarch's heads twisted in disbelief. Impossible. Is it? Elamin asked, her voice cutting cleanly through the rising cacophony. Ask yourselves, why has it responded to us? Why did a primitive world with fractured cultures and untamed creativity awaken something your ancient science could not? She let the question hang. You have ruled by control, we offer something else. Rafe Ibera stepped forward, his voice a hard counterpoint to the diplomat's calm. Joys. At that moment, a new force rippled through the halo, not physical, not even properly definable by the sciences known to the Council. It was a shift in collective cognition. Species that had cowered now stood. The Vathari projected a declaration of neutrality and noncompliance. The Threxan Compact severed their trade dependencies and offered mutual support to Earth. The Kraloi publicly opened their archives to all, free of conquered sanction. And hundreds of smaller polities, once irrelevant, now spoke with voices emboldened by Earth's defiance. The conquered's dominance did not collapse in fire and battle. It collapsed in decision. The minor worlds rejected their chains. The great species, stunned and unwilling to escalate into open war against such a vast uprising, hesitated, and hesitation in that critical moment was fatal to their authority. The Ulvanarch thundered demands, the Karun Bloodsinger howled for war, the Virathi threatened embargoes and reprisals. But none of it mattered. The halo no longer obeyed them. It pulsed now with a new pattern shaped by human thought, a chaotic, living rhythm of dissent, invention, and renewal. In the center of it all, Earth's delegation stood, not triumphant but resolute. Ambassador Elamin raised her hand, not in conquest but in offering. We are not here to destroy what you built, she said. We are here to finish what you abandoned. The halo's lattice responded with a pulse that spread across the Councilorum like sunrise breaking across a sleeping sea. And the ancient order fell away. Not with screams, but with the sudden, liberating gasp of something long chained finally breathing free. The voice of Earth, seated in patience and persistence, had shattered the stars' oldest council, not through domination, but by reminding the galaxy of what it had forgotten. Possibility, the halo no longer spoke in one voice, it now sang in a chorus. Across the void, the Councilorum's dominion had ceased to function as a monolith. Its edicts were no longer enforced. Species once shackled by ritual obedience now debated openly, argued, collaborated. For the first time in remembered history, the Council was no longer a ruling caste, it was a conversation. But transformation, like gravity, demanded mass to sustain it. The ancient empires that had orchestrated stasis for thousands of cycles were not gone. They were disoriented, fragmented, stripped of unquestioned supremacy, but not broken. And some had not given up. In the shadows between stars, remnants of the Karun legions coalesced around a single unifying doctrine: order through cleansing. They called themselves the Reclamation. No longer bound by conquered decorum, they struck swiftly, reclaiming outposts, disrupting trade, obliterating infrastructure critical to the emerging free network. Their goal was not to restore the Council, but to burn down the galaxy before humanity could finish remaking it. They launched without declaration. 10 human colonies were attacked in under a week. 2 orbital settlements on the Threxan frontier were glassed from orbit. A joint Vathari-Kral research node vanished mid-transmission, presumed destroyed. The message was clear. You may have awakened something, but we will smother it before it becomes flame. Humanity's response came not from Earth, but from a coalition that had never existed until now. Formed in urgency and bound by no charter, it bore no name at first, but in every system under threat, it arrived faster than any force had a right to. Hybrid fleets, Vathari lightframes supported by human carriers, Threxan tactical engines interfaced with Earth's adaptive AI, weapons platforms of alien design now guided by chaotic human predictive algorithms. Command hierarchies dissolved in favor of modular war networks, where decision-making adapted dynamically in the middle of combat. Rafe Ibera stood aboard Vigilant Dawning, one of the first joint command vessels born of this new alliance. Its bridge was half holographic, tuned to both human neural implants and Vathari photonic reflex fields. His command team included a Karun exile who had defected, a Kral empath technician, and 2 Threxan war engineers who had rewired their entire species' doctrines to adapt to Earth's tempo. They called themselves Conquered Reborn, but the name was loose. What bound them was not ideology but rhythm. They moved like stormfronts. Every attack met escalation, every colony struck was followed by a liberation, not won by force but by reclamation of thought. Civilian networks rose in the aftermath of each engagement. Defense was not a shield but a scaffolding around which new ways of living were seeded. On a broken moon in the Galador Rift, where the Reclamation had executed over 12,000 Vathari civilians, El-Amin herself walked among the survivors. No diplomatic detachment, no separation of presence. She listened, she offered assistance, she asked questions no conquered envoy had ever cared to pose. "You cannot kill a voice," she said to a survivor who could barely stand, "not if others choose to carry it forward." The resistance tried to silence humanity again. They failed. Because Earth no longer stood alone. Because Earth had never truly been alone, it had merely been the first to speak when it wasn't permitted. On the edge of known space, a final engagement took shape. The Reclamation gathered its largest fleet at a relic system known only in Achelian myths, Salhaddan's Spine, a dead array of broken megastructures, ancient even by conquered standards. They planned to ignite the system's dormant singularity, creating a cascade that would collapse nearby slipstream lanes and strand the core free territories in isolation. The trap was perfect. But Rao had been studying them. At the heart of Salhaddan's ruins was not a singularity, but a construct older than the halo, something inert, untranslated, shrouded in quantum fog. Something that reacted to resonance. She deployed a beacon keyed to Earth's original voiceprint, the one that had echoed through the halo. As the Reclamation began the ignition sequence, the construct stirred. Not as a weapon, not as a machine, but as a witness. It remembered. And it responded. The resonance that surged from the spine fractured the Reclamation's fleet in mid-maneuver. Systems died, navigational data looped, FTL drives failed catastrophically. The Reclamation's command carrier vanished in a white collapse of folded geometry, swallowed by a response it never intended to trigger. The construct did not remain active. It simply quieted again. But the message was clear. Earth's voice was not the first. Only the most recent. The battle ended without final bloodshed. The remnants of the Reclamation, leaderless and paralyzed, surrendered or scattered. No unified resistance remained. But Earth did not claim victory. No parades, no declarations of dominion. Instead, the newly allied species convened in the void where the Councilorum Halo once presided. The halo still hung there, but it had changed. It no longer broadcast control. It echoed with living voices. In this reformed chamber, not bound by castes or species hierarchy, Ambassador El-Amin stood again. Her words were no longer amplified artificially, they resonated because every voice had been given space. Let this be the beginning, not the center. Let no world rise so high that it forgets how to listen. The new order that followed was not shaped in Earth's image, but inspired by Earth's insistence that no image be imposed. It was messy, fragmented, alive. The conquered was no more. But from its ruins, a network emerged, not a council, but a conversation, ever-changing, ever-challenging. And Earth's voice remained, not louder than others, but unafraid. It did not stop echoing, because now it no longer echoed alone.